military custody. But the White House issued a veto threat yesterday afternoon saying that the bill, quote, micromanages the work of our experienced counterterrorism professionals. And now live coverage of the U.S. Senate here on C-SPAN 2.
The Senate will come to order. The chaplain, Dr. Barry Black, will lead the Senate in prayer.
Let us pray. Eternal Lord God, the center of our joy, give our senators today a passion for you. May they find joy in doing your will and delight in obeying your precepts. Give them courage and resolve to do their duty as you give them the wisdom to see it. Create in them hearts that strive to be spent in your service, doing all the good they can for as many people as they can. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will read a communication to the Senate.
Washington, D.C., November 18, 2011. To the Senate, under the provisions of Rule 1, Paragraph 3 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I hereby appoint the Honorable Christopher A. Coons, a senator from the state of Delaware, to perform the duties of the chair. Signed, Daniel K. Inouye, President pro tempore.
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Senator from Michigan.
The Senate pending business now is Senate Bill 1867, the Defense Authorization Act. Is that correct?
Clerk will report.
Calendar number 230, S-1867, a bill to authorize appropriations for fiscal year 2012 for military activities of the Department of Defense, for military construction, and so forth, and for other purposes.
Mr. President, senators are encouraged to come to the floor to offer their amendments this morning. We're going to be here doing business. Senators that have remarks, speeches, proponents of amendments, opponents of amendments are given an opportunity here today, which may be one of the relatively few opportunities that are going to be available. We will be here the Monday after we return as well. Before the vote at 5:30 on Monday the 28th on a judicial nomination, but we will be here before that time also to hear from proponents and opponents of amendments, to have people offer amendments. We're not going to have the whole week, we've been told by the leader, when we come back for this bill, so we're going to have to make additional progress today. We made some progress last night. We cleared some amendments last night. We're going to try to clear some additional amendments this morning and adopt some amendments that can be cleared. We have 155 filed amendments. We have 31 pending amendments. And again, we're going to try to clear some of those today, so adopt some of those today. We're going to try to do the same on Monday when we return. But again, I would urge that senators that want to speak on pending or filed amendments, proponents of those amendments, opponents of those amendments, let us know immediately, if you would, whether you wish to speak in support or opposition of pending or filed amendments. Obviously, if people want to oppose amendments, then we're not going to clear them if we know about that, but we have to know about that. And these are on file. The clerk has the amendments. We know which amendments are pending. The list is available. The staff is going to be here for the first couple days, at least next week. Prior to Thanksgiving, our staffs will be here to work with staffs of senators to try to revise amendments which may be open to revision, so that the work is going to go on, and we have to use these time periods. Today, next Monday and Tuesday for work on amendments, the Monday we get back for work on amendments, because we need to get this bill passed. This is a critically important bill, and with 155 filed amendments, 31 of which are already pending, we got a lot of work to do. We're going to try to do the very best we can, but we've got to get a bill passed, and we've got to debate some of the very significant amendments which have already been filed and are pending. So I want to thank my friend from Arizona and see whether he might want to comment on my comments or otherwise.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona.
I want to thank Senator Levin and his staff for their hard work on this very important piece of legislation. Glad to see that the chairman announced the staff will be in working next week. That for a change they'll get taxpayers will get a return on their investment. I'm very glad to know that. And so, but in all seriousness, they've done a lot of work from late last night. We're working hard all this week, and I also think, Mr. Chairman, I think that maybe our colleagues should plan on some late nights when we get back, because we do need to get this done. There's a lot of important business before the United States Senate. I'd also like to point out that we spent the better part of yesterday on the detainee issue, and I appreciate that the detainee issue is one that is of transcendent importance. It certainly goes beyond just national security. It's a very controversial issue with the American people and members on both sides of the aisle. On one side of the aisle, they would like to see much more restrictive policies, and on the other side of the aisle, there is a very serious concern and a legitimate concern, although I don't share it, about erosion of the constitutional rights and liberties of American citizens. But I do believe that hopefully we can get a vote on that amendment so we can move forward to other very important amendments that members, obviously, by the sheer number of amendments, are very interested in this process. So I hope also we are able to get a unanimous consent agreement to cut off the number of pending amendments so that we can make progress on those that have been filed and those that are pending. I want to thank the chairman again and our respective staffs and our colleagues. I thought it was a very beneficial debate that we had yesterday, that a lot of members participated in. I think it served to not only educate our colleagues and the American people who observed it, but I also think it was a healthy discussion that was held on both sides of the aisle and both sides of this issue of very well-informed senators on this issue. And again, I understand, for example, the senator from Illinois, Senator Durbin, came to the floor and said that we needed very in-depth discussion on this issue. I think we had that. But I also think that this is a very, very important issue and one that deserved the attention of the Senate, but now I think it's time to move on. And, I also want to congratulate all members who took part in sort of a colloquy and discussion we had amongst members on both sides of this issue yesterday. I found that those colloquies add a great deal to the debate as we get the input and ideas and sometimes spirited discussion on these issues. So I thank the chairman, and we look forward to getting this important piece of legislation done. Mr. Chairman, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, I thank, first of all, my friend and colleague from Arizona, the ranking member, for his comments, for all of his work on the committee, and all of our colleagues on the committee have put in a lot of time. And I want to emphasize something that he said about the opportunity here for debate. We have a number of pending amendments, including the amendments on detainees. We're here to hear debate on those or any other amendment today and on Monday. We were here yesterday, had a long debate, as the senator from Arizona said. We had a lengthy debate on this, and we were prepared to vote. The supporters were not. That's fair enough. If they want additional time to debate it, we should welcome that. But there is time. There's time today. There's time on Monday when we get back to debate that amendment and those amendments, not only on the detainees, but on many other issues that are important that are in this bill. I agree with my friend from Arizona that we should ask the majority leader to make Monday night available for votes after the scheduled vote at 5:30. We need to have votes on amendments, and I would hope that there will be the amendments that can't be agreed to will be voted on Monday night after the vote on the judge, which is scheduled for 5:30. I also agree with the senator from Arizona about trying to get a limit on the number of amendments, and we will try again today to see if we can get a unanimous consent agreement. I haven't had a chance to talk this morning with the senator from Arizona, but we will try, and he's just given me an indication that this is fine with him, to see if we can't set a time later on today, maybe at noon or 1 o'clock, for the filing of amendments, and to limit amendments to those that are filed by that time. We're going to try to get that done, and with a safety valve, which I suggested last night, and I think is acceptable to the Republican manager, my friend from Arizona, which is that in addition to whatever amendments are filed by whatever time we put in the unanimous consent proposal, that there be an additional 2 amendments on each side, which would be available to the managers, that would need to be relevant, just relevant amendments to a amendment which is filed or relevant to the bill. I think we would need a safety valve, and people would understand that. Those 2 amendments would be allocable, 2 amendments each by the Republican manager and myself, if that is agreeable. I mean, it would take unanimous consent, but I think everyone realizes we got to have a universe here that we can work with during the next week.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona.
I don't want to talk too much longer. I see our dear friend from New Mexico, who's been serious enough to come in this morning and debate and discuss his concerns about the bill and amendment. But I would ask the chairman, we have, as you mentioned, a large number of pending amendments, not just filed, but pending. And one of them, of course, is with the detainee issue. There is another Paul amendment. There are several others that perhaps we could vote on Monday, as the chairman mentioned. And if any of our colleagues feel that they haven't got time to amend it, they're welcome to come now, and they're welcome to come on Monday. And I understand it may cause them some small inconvenience in their schedule. But if they filed a pending amendment, then if there's an amendment pending, then they ought to be able to adjust their schedules to come and debate it. If they aren't able to do that, we should still be able to dispose of those amendments. I say with great respect and courtesy to all of my colleagues. So I hope that Chairman Levin and I and others would say, look, we're going to notify everybody. We're going to have votes on the following amendments on Monday afternoon, after the vote on the judge. And if you are interested in debating it, we will be here to debate it and discuss it with you. We've got to get this legislation passed for the good of the men and women who are serving this nation with far greater inconvenience than, frankly, our colleagues might experience by having to come back on Monday or coming over here today. I yield.
Mr. President.
Senator from Michigan.
Thank you, and I will be done in one moment so that our friend from New Mexico can schedule his presentation. I just wanted to add one additional thing to what the Senator from Arizona said, in addition to agreeing with him, that, as I said, we will be here today and we will be here Monday, so that we will have opportunity to debate. I'm sorry, a week from Monday, thank you. So that there will be opportunity, plenty of opportunity to debate these pending amendments or other amendments. And people need to know that we're going to be seeking votes on these pending amendments if we can't clear them or work them out. And there will be an opportunity for debate before the votes. One other comment, and that is that I will, a little later on this morning, have a detailed statement addressing the detainee issue. It will address some of the statements which are incorrect and misleading, which were in the administration's statement on this subject, and also for some of the statements of our colleagues which need to be addressed and I believe corrected, because this is a complex issue and it's important to know what is in the bill and what is not in the bill, and if it's properly characterized and if it's properly stated, it's still complex. But to misstate it or overstate it or to mischaracterize what is in our bill just confuses an issue which needs to be debated on its merits and not confused. It's complicated enough without obfuscation and confusion about what is in the bill on detention or other matters and what is not in the bill. So I would yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona.
Appreciate the indulgence of my friend Senator Udall. If it's okay with the Chairman, I had to ask unanimous consent that following amendments be considered pending on behalf of their sponsors. Would that be agreeable? For Senator Cornyn, Amendment 1200 related to Taiwan F-16s. For Senator Ayotte, Amendment 1066 related to financial audits. For Senator Ayotte, Amendment 1067 as revised related to notification of Congress to the initial custody of members of al-Qaeda. For Senator Ayotte, Amendment 1068 related to the authorization of lawful interrogation methods. For Senator Brown, Amendment 1119 related to child custody rights. For Senator Brown, Amendment 1090 related to housing allowance rates. For Senator Brown, Amendment 1089 related to disclosures by schools participating in tuition assistance. For Senator Wicker, Amendment 1056 related to military chaplains. And for Senator Wicker, Amendment 1116 related to truck licenses for transitioning service members.
President.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Mr. President.
Senator from Michigan.
Let me notify senators on our side that we are more than willing to do that same courtesy for them if they would let our staff know here at the cloakroom this morning. We can do the same thing for senators on our side as the senator from Arizona correctly did and properly did for senators on his side.
And could I say, I hope that members on both sides, if they have amendments, get them to us this morning so that we can bring this part of the process to an end.
And if I may, Mr. President, doing what the senator from Arizona just did will also facilitate, hopefully, the acceptance of the unanimous consent request that there then be a cutoff, as I described, at perhaps noon or 1 o'clock today, so that we can know what the universe is and begin to whittle it down. And I yield the floor.
Clerk will report by number the amendments called up by the senator from Arizona.
Senator from Arizona, Mr. McCain, 4 other senators, proposes en bloc amendments numbered 1200, 1066, 1067, 1068, 1119, 1090, 1089, 1056, and 1116.
Mr. President,
The Senator from New Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me first say, before I offer my amendments, I had the opportunity yesterday to listen to Senator Levin, Senator McCain, Senator Durbin, and many other senators with regard to the debate on this bill, and I thought that it was excellent debate. And I thought it was lively, it was robust, it was to the point, and it was the Senate at its best. And I don't know how we get to the point where we have the kind of debate that you were having on this defense authorization bill, but I hope that we can do more of it, and I look forward to returning after Thanksgiving and having the opportunity to do that. So I compliment the two top members of that committee and the other senators that were here on that debate. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to set aside the pending amendments in order to call up amendments number 1153, 1154, and 1202 by number in block, and that once the amendments are reported, the Senate return to the regular order.
Is there objection? Without objection, the clerk will report.
Senator from New Mexico, Mr. Udall, for himself and others, proposes en bloc amendments numbered 1153, 1154, and 1202.
Mr. President, I have remarks with me here on each of those amendments, and I ask unanimous consent that they be inserted in the record at the appropriate place as if read.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from Michigan.
Let me thank the Senator from New Mexico first for his remarks, and I agree with him. It was a lively debate, and I also agree with him that it is to be desired that that kind of debate occurs more often in the U.S. Senate. And the Senator from New Mexico has been very active in the effort to have these kind of debates by rules changes which would make these kind of debates a lot more likely, and by other mechanisms. And I just, to make an inquiry here, did the Senator from New Mexico restore the regular order to the Levin-McCain amendment? I missed that.
I did.
I thank the Senator did.
Yeah. And let me say to Chairman Levin, not only lively, robust, but very informative. I learned a lot in the process of listening to you and to Senator McCain and Senator Durbin and the other senators that came down about the issue, and I think that's the way the Senate works best, is to have the amendments and the various provisions of the defense authorization bill be a part of a lively and informative debate. So, and I thank you for that, and I yield the floor.
I assume that then that having watched the debate and been informed that the Senator from New Mexico now takes the position that Senator Levin and I do on this issue, and his next mission is to convince his colleague from Colorado of the correctness of our position.
At this point, I am still listening and trying to ascertain as much as I can about the actual provisions of the defense authorization bill, but you're correct. There could be trouble in Udall Valley here. There might be a split. We don't see that yet, but there's a possibility of it.
Well, one thing I've learned about the Senator from New Mexico is that he does give all issues a fair and objective hearing, and he listens and he pays attention and he's informed in his decisions. So thank you for taking part in this one.
Well, and I also know that when the two of you, when the chairman and Senator McCain, the ranking member, come together on a provision and you're able to persuade your committee to go with it, that says something to the Senate itself, to have that before the Senate, so I want to study it very carefully. I know Senator Graham was down here, who's been very, very active on this issue and has a tremendous amount of experience. So I look forward to the continuing debate, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President, I just want to thank the Senator from New Mexico again for the comments, but also to tell him how very much impressed I have been right from the first day I heard him with his open-mindedness on subjects. It's very, very important that we keep open minds, and he has shown just how to do that, and we appreciate that on an issue this complex, particularly in the defense bill. the absence of the quorum. Oh, thank you.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The senator from Arizona.
President, I ask unanimous consent further proceedings on the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Mr. President, our staff are working on various amendments that we could get approved by both sides. We think that there are a number of those that we can get agreement on to make progress today. And while we are going through that process, I'd like to point out that the front page of this morning's Wall Street Journal, I'm sorry to note, may be a harbinger of events that will happen in the future, that will take place in the future, which will be unfortunate for the United States of America and indeed tragic for Iraq. Front page of the Wall Street Journal today says, standoff over U.S. air base in Iraq. A tense standoff between local police and the Iraqi army played out on Thursday at the gate of the U.S. air base in the northern city of Kirkuk, where a dispute over land and oil threatened national stability and unity as U.S. forces withdraw. The territorial conflict between the central government in Baghdad and the semi-autonomous Kurdistan region is just one flashpoint that some American and Iraqi officials say could boil over after the full pullout of U.S. troops at the end of December. Fears of a clash between Iraqi troops and Kurdish forces were heightened on Thursday when the Kurdish-dominated police in Kirkuk blocked senior Iraqi army commanders from entering the base, where they said they were planning to take over the facility from the U.S. military. The Army officials brought reporters from the Iraqi state-owned television to document the handover in what appeared to be in an effort to show the nation that Baghdad was in charge. The central government, headed by Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, is increasingly eager to project its power ahead of the U.S. pullout. What this is about, Mr. President, is the volatile region, particularly in the area around Kirkuk, which is also symptomatic of the entire northern Iraq border between Kurdistan, the semi-autonomous region of Iraq, and the rest of Iraq. The area is inhabited by different ethnic groups, range from Turkmen to Arab to other nationalities that all inhabit the area. And one of the reasons why some of us wanted to have a residual force remain in Iraq, one of the actually three major reasons, was because of the tensions in this area, which have already bubbled up on several occasions. In fact, there was a point some months ago where two forces were the Peshmerga, the Kurdish military, and the Iraqi military were close to a shooting situation, and United States forces intervened. Obviously, they are not going to be there. Obviously, already before they've even left, there has been a tense standoff at one of the major air bases in Iraq. I greatly fear, I pray not, but I greatly fear that we will see more and more of these kinds of tensions between the Kurdish area and the rest of Iraq. And a lot of it has to do with oil. A lot of it has to do as to who's going to control the oil revenues in the area. Other parts of it go back to the era of Saddam Hussein, where he moved out Kurdish individuals and others and moved in people who were loyal to him into the area. There's still enormous land disputes in the area as well. Suffice to say, it's a place of great tension, and I continue to be deeply worried about this kind of tensions which could lead to armed conflict, but also over time, in the view of some, could lead to a breakup, an actual breakup of Iraq into Kurdish areas, Sunni areas, and even two different Shia areas of Iraq. So I'm sorry to see this. I'm sorry that this is happening and that there are more people who are predicting greater tensions in the area. But I have to say, I am not surprised. I'm not surprised. And you know, the sad thing about all this, and I had a rather, shall I say, spirited exchange with the Secretary of Defense the other day in the hearing that was held in the Armed Services Committee. This isn't a policy matter. This is not an issue of whether or not we should have French fries served in school lunches. This is an issue that we have shed the blood of well over 4,400 young Americans. And I greatly fear that the opportunity that was purchased with their expenditure of American blood and treasure may go all for naught because of our failure to maintain a residual force in Iraq, which I repeat was always envisioned when the agreement for U.S. withdrawal was made by the previous administration. By the way, an agreement that I disagreed with at that time. So I hope that when Prime Minister Maliki comes to Washington next month, that some of these issues can be ironed out, that we can have greater cooperation. But I don't think that there's any doubt that right now up in the area of Kirkuk, they are paying much attention to the statements that may be made by the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Mr. President, I would request the dispensing with the quorum call.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today in support of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012. I want to commend Senator Levin and Senator McCain for their leadership in bringing this piece of legislation to the floor. All of my colleagues in the Armed Services Committee have done, I think, a remarkable job and done it with great discipline and dedication and concern for the men and women of our armed forces and for the defense of the nation. This is the 50th consecutive defense authorization bill that the Senate has considered, and I hope we'll soon be able to send it to the President for his signature. We owe this to our servicemen and women who are devoting themselves and indeed their families also to the protection of the United States. We've made difficult decisions in putting together this bill, especially in these challenging economic times. We were able to find $26 billion in savings from the original budget request the President submitted earlier this year. But I'm confident this bill provides a budget that allows the Department of Defense to combat current threats, plan for future threats, and provide for the welfare and protection of those men and women who serve and their families who serve this nation. I'm pleased at the start of the debate on this important measure we were able to take up and pass Senator Ayot's amendment on strategic airlift, which I was pleased to co-sponsor. I was indeed very impressed with Senator Ayot's thorough understanding of this issue, her ability to, I think, seize on a point and make sure that it was fully understood. We were able also to bring together leaders of our services, the Department of Defense, Transcom, and the Air Force, so that this decision was based on a very thorough analysis, and we owe a great deal to Senator Ayot for her extraordinary performance in this regard. I'm also working on several other amendments that would, I think, provide additional assistance, not just to the overall structure of the Defense Department, but also to our military personnel. And these deal with protecting the individual servicemen and women from exploitation by businesses and by other financial entities. We've taken some steps going forward with the creation within this new Consumer Protection Bureau of the Office of Service Members Relations headed by Holly Petraeus, but we have to do more, and I hope we can in this bill. I also am proposing amendments that would address some of the inconsistencies in the policies that affect National Guard dual status technicians. And a further area of concern is better coordination between the mental health care provided by the Department of Defense and community providers, particularly for members of the National Guard and Reserve and their families. They often don't have the opportunity to be close to a major military installation. And so coordination with local community-based providers is so critical to helping these members and their families. And I hope, again, we can work together to get these provisions included in the legislation. Let me highlight, I think, a few of the measures in the overall legislation that are very important. It authorizes a 1.6% across-the-board pay raise and reauthorizes over 30 types of bonuses and special pays for our men and women in uniform. I think this is critical in meeting the needs of our military personnel. The legislation also authorizes full funding of the DoD's Mine-Resistant Ambush Protected Vehicle, the MRAP program, which provides for the sustainment and procurement of MRAPs and MATVs to protect our troops on the ground. Again, having recently returned about 3 weeks ago from Afghanistan, these are critical weapon systems. And my colleagues on the committee who also frequently travel into these war zones will attest to that fact also, and I'm pleased that we included this provision in the legislation. The proposed legislation also authorized $11.2 billion for Afghan Security Forces Fund to train and equip the Afghan Army and Police. And this is a $1.6 billion reduction from the President's request. The CENTCOM Commander, General Mattis, also General Caldwell, who was the commander of training on the ground, determined that this reduction could be made because of the efficiencies being achieved by NATO training mission in Afghanistan, again, under leadership of Lieutenant General Caldwell. We have to be much more efficient going forward in terms of resources, and we also have to prepare the long term, not alone, but with our international partners to support the creation and sustainment of the Afghani National Security Forces. It represents probably the most significant component long-term of stabilizing Afghanistan. It cannot do it alone. There has to be political will and capacity. But as we develop this military force, we also have to think ahead about how we are not alone, but together with our allies, going to ensure that it's properly resourced in order to be a contributing factor in the stability of Afghanistan. This year, once again, I also had the privilege of serving as the chairman of the Sea Power Committee alongside Senator Wicker, who I want to thank for his thoughtful and his significant contributions to legislation. The Sea Power Committee was focused on the needs of the Navy, the Marine Corps, and strategic mobility forces. The subcommittee put particular emphasis on supporting Marine and Naval forces engaged in combat operations, improving efficiencies, and applying the savings to higher priority programs. The subcommittee specifically included the required funding or requested funding for 2 Virginia-class submarines, the DDG-1000 program, the Aircraft Carrier Replacement Program, the DDG-51 Aegis Destroyer Program, Littoral Combat Ship LCS Program, the LHA-R Amphibious Assault Ship, the Joint High-Speed Vessel, the Mobile landing platform and the P-8 maritime patrol aircraft. All of these weapon systems are important aspects of Navy and Marine projection of power throughout the world. And I'm particularly pleased, obviously, about the continued support for the Virginia-class submarine program and the DDG-1000, which is an integral part not only of our national security, but of the economy of New England particularly. Subcommittee also included language that would require the Department of Navy to restructure plans to replace the canceled expeditionary fighting vehicle system of the Marine Corps and to complete an analysis of the amphibious combat vehicle alternatives before launching into a Marine personnel carrier acquisition program. Essentially, the Marine Corps is restudying their ability to move Marines from ship to shore and then from shore inland to exploit the beachhead, and that careful study is necessary before they make commitments for future programs for equipment. We also include language that would permit the Navy to use multi-year procurement authority to buy common cockpits and avionics systems for the Navy's H-60 helicopters in the most efficient manner. Let me conclude by once again thanking Senator Wicker, particularly for his help with respect to the Sea Power Committee, to thanking all of my colleagues. I think we have a good piece of legislation before us. I hope in the process of amendment we can improve it, and I look forward to sending such a bill to the President for his signature. And with that, Mr. President, I would...
President.
Senator from Michigan.
First, let me thank the Senator from Rhode Island, my dear friend, for all of the work he does on our committee and the other work he does for this Senate. He is an invaluable member of our Armed Services Committee, and I just want to not let this moment pass without acknowledging that. I yield the floor.
President suggests the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Kaka.
On behalf of Senator Corker, I ask unanimous consent to temporarily set aside the pending amendment and call up the following amendments in block. 1171, terrorist activities in Pakistan, 1172, coalition support in Pakistan, and 1173, sense of the Senate regarding NATO.
Without objection. Clerk will report.
Senator from Arizona, Mr. McCain, for Mr. Corker, proposes amendments on block numbered 1171, 1172, and 1173.
Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, I would ask,
Excuse me. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the pending amendments be temporarily laid aside, and I call up on behalf of Senator Bingaman amendment number 1117, and on behalf of Senator Gillibrand amendments number 1187 and 1211. Clerk will report. And before the clerk reports, I would also ask a unanimous consent that Senator Gillibrand be added as co-sponsor Senate Bill 1092, the Levin McCain Counterfeit Parts Amendment. Without objection, clerk will report.
Senator from Michigan, Mr. Levin, for Senators Bingaman and Gillibrand, proposes amendments in block numbered 1117, 1187, and 1211.
Mr. President, I would now ask for the regular order on the Levin McCain amendment. It is now the pending question. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Dr. Alexander.
Zayat. Thank you.